Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're in Masechtas Bava Batra Daf Nun. We are going to begin on the top of Nun Amud Aleph, the second line from the top. Here we are in the middle of the Gemara, which discussed whether or not a wife whose property was sold can make the statement Nachas Ruach Hasisa L'Baili, that the reason why I didn't say anything is because my husband was involved and I didn't want to get him upset. And therefore, because of that, mekach batal. So we ended up saying that, in fact, she has that right to say that statement. And therefore, if it's lokach min ish, if the land was purchased from the husband and then afterwards was purchased for a small amount from the woman, so we say it doesn't mean anything that she was involved, because again, she could say, Nachas Ruach Hasisa L'Baili. So we said maybe the only time that we would say it's batal is by a case of three fields. Either where the field was actually written into the ksuba, or in a case where it was designated for the ksuba, like an apotiki, or that it was evaluated. So all these different cases, the Rashbam explained in yesterday's daf that she's more samech das on those fields, that she's going to be getting them. And therefore, maybe in those cases is when it says mekach batal. So the Gemara then asks, Zulamuti mai. So in which cases would we say the mekach would not be batal? Maybe we're talking about any other type of possession, any other lands. No, koshkein dehavle eva, dirmle enayach nasat begershim amisa. So in that situation, we should also say the same thing, because it's clear what you don't want to sell after to this lokeach. It's because you want to divorce me and you want this land. So therefore, she could still have that feeling. Says the Rashbam, kol shekin dematzas amr, she could still say nachas ruach hasisa l'baili, and therefore it should still be batal. The havle eva imo timchor lo lokeach mabala. If I don't sell it, the kol shekin dahavi mechel batal, it should be batal. The titer for ishim menu ksubasa kishnis garish yomas bala. And again, this is the whole notion that the husband's going to feel that way. Skipping a few lines in the Rashbam, Abu Bahadak Gimel Sadois, the three fields that we mentioned before, Lo Amr Lo Bal Hachi, Dimi Acher Shiachtam Lo Dinhu Shita'arir Ben Bechirasan. So over here, you already designated them for the field and for my ksuba. So therefore, in that situation, the husband wouldn't be upset, because you're the one that specifically put these fields aside for me. And therefore, that's the reason why all other fields where there was no designation, so why are you against me selling them? So there would be a higher level of Ava. Skipping a couple more lines, Ella filo bahanak gimel sados the leiklo mimrahachi. Even these three fields, a filo hachi mechel batal. Even there, it's not good. Kibadim mikol makam enu shelo gamri. It's not hers completely. Ki'im shel baal. It's really her husband's. So matzas amra, she could say nachas ruach hasisa l'baili. I was just doing it to find favor in my husband's eyes. So when would we say that we would not apply mekach batal, or we do not say nachas ruach hasisa l'baili? That would be a good sale. Back in the Gemara, elamute nichse melug. So what is that referring to? So it's coming to tell you, says the Rashbam, im lokach min ish. If the case where nichse melug, in which he has right to the peros, but it's her land, if it was sold, the chazavlachem and ish from the woman, mechel kayim. In that case, it would have been a valid sale. Givan d'shalahain, since it's her land, it belongs to her. It's just that the husband has certain rights to the peros. Einu yegora mebala v'yachol imchais labala shel yimchor. She's not going to be concerned about her husband. She will protest, saying, "Don't sell it." There you would not say that din. So our case of our Mishnah, that there's no chazaka, but a raya that it was sold, so is b'nichse malug mayri. It's referring to nichse malug. Okay. And then the Gemara continues. Ha'omer Amemar Ish v'ish shemachar menichsim alug losav klum. I don't understand. When it comes to nichsim alug, actually it's not a sale at all. Says the Rashbam, Ish shemachar v'acharav ha'isha losav klum d'matzah samanachas rochas yisrael baili. So l'chayra, you can still say this statement. It should still be batal. After all, it sounds logical because neither of them really have full rights to this land. The wife has the land, the woman has the husband has the peros, but it's not exclusively one of them. So then it makes sense that maybe it shouldn't be good, as a Maimar says. No, Kiet Mar da Maimar. When do we say that it's not a good sale? Is Heichad Zav and Ihu Mace. It's where both of them were not on the same page. The husband is the only one who sold it, and then he dies. Asi Ihi Umafka. Then she can come later on and have it removed. Since the husband only has rights to the peros and the wife gets it back after the husband dies, since she owns the property. So therefore, that's when a Maimar says that it's not good. Inami, alternatively, Zavna Ihu Mesa. Let's say she's the only one who sold it and then dies. Now, even though it's her land, but he had right to the peros. And based on the famous Tikkun of Usha, Osi Ihu Mapik but the Kanta Rabbanan. So it can be the husband can remove it after his wife's passing. When a woman sells her nixim malug, and then dies, so the din is that the husband has a right to be able to take the land back. Says the Rashbam, can first time in Bava Kama. If you remember, in Bava Kama we learned the almuhu rabbanan l'shibuda debal, that the rabbanan made this connection to the land to the husband very strong. Mishum Eva, in order for there not to be anger and animosity between the husband and wife. The Asuhu loikech rishon, and therefore they made him as though he was like the loikech rishon. Umil hachi ahani machiras isha shim yomos bala b'chayeh yitro lokech. It only works if the husband dies first. Then that person would be able, the lokech would be able to keep the property. But we're talking about a situation where the wife died. So in that situation, in Usha, they consider the husband like the Lokech Rishon, and therefore he has the rights to get that land back. Okay, so that is the times when a Maimar says it doesn't work. However, if it would be sold by both of them, then it would work. Okay, maybe he has the din like Rabbi Elazar, the Sanya. Let's say you sell your slave, which is like the karka, if you will. However, pasuk imo shishmeshenu shloishim yoim. You have a deal that for the next 30 days is going to still work with me. So I'm getting these temporary peros for 30 days. So he's not completely my slave because I sold him to you. So you have the karka, but I do have rights for peros for the next 30 days. Now, what happens when it comes to the din of Yom or Yomayim? If, let's say, after a certain amount of time, the Adain kills the Eved, do we say that we apply the dinim of Yom or Yomayim? So let's look in the Gemara. Yom or Yomayim. The original owner has the din of Yom or Yomayim, because he's still by him. So therefore, we go buster, let's say the kark, if you will. But not the second guy, because he's not there yet. So ksaver kinyan paris ki kinyan aguf dami. The fact that the first adain has rights to his peros to these 30 days, that's kinyan aguf, like he actually owns the the person himself, and therefore he has all the dinim of an eved. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Hasheni Yeshim B'dino Yom Yomayim Imnei Shehu Kaspo. No, it's the other way around. The second guy, the second master, if you will, he really owns the Eved. It's his land. Harisha Enu B'din Yom Yomayim Imnei She'enu Kaspo. Ksaver Pairs Lav K'Kinyan Guf Dami. Right? So the second guy has a Kinyan Guf now, but he isn't getting the peros for these 30 days. Rather, the first guy gets the peros. But if you hold Kinyan peros as lavki Kinyan aguf, so then we go buster the second guy. So let's look at the Rashbam. Harishon, the first master, im he kahu makes. If he hits him, the evident he dies. So shnei yomim metachas hakazu, because of this hit. So so machlokas whether the din Yomi Yomayim. The pasuk says, and Rashbam quotes it, Yomi Yomayim yamod lo yukam upotter. The ilu machn Yisrael chaveru imachmas machna zu maka filu seif shana nerag kidinafkulan mevanika hamaka malama shachayv shenai so etc. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin says if he hits someone and we're not sure if it's a fatal blow, we'll put you in jail for a year to figure out whether this guy's going to die from that blow, and if it is, it's considered murder. However, when it comes to an Eved, if after a couple of days he dies, you're going to be potter. But that's only if you're the master. But if you're not the master, then you had no right to do it. Okay, so that's the distinction. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Let's continue on to Nun Amud Beis. Shneim yeshnu b'din yoyim o yomayim. Actually, both of them, both masters have this din. Zem imnei shu tachta. The first one because the Eved's still by him. The zem imnei shu kaspa. The second was because it's his money. Umasafkele ikinin peres kikinin goftami. I don't know. Ilav kikinin goftami. I'm not sure what the din is. So therefore, because we're not sure, the suffering the fashas hakil. We're gonna end up being lenient because we don't know whether or not what the din is, and therefore we're not going to kill this guy based on the suffix. Rabbi Lezer Omer, and this is the key line over here. Rabbi Lezer says, "Shneim einu b'din omu yomayim." Neither of them, zelafi sheno tachla v'zelafi sheno kasboi. The fact that each of them only has partial ownership, if you will, then they're not considered to have the rights of din of yom yomayim. V'yamar Rava, my time at Rabbi Lezer Omer Kra. Lo yukam ki kaspahu. It says because it's his money only. Kasma miyuchad lo. So, therefore, this is the reason why. Says the and Rashbam says miyucharhu. This is extra. Let's finish this Rashi. Demand destinas tam hoyu sarch litin bedavar v'lor lo yukam lafi shekaspahu. Inami the matzah michtav ki kesavhu mishum hachi nami yolaf ameimar. So this is the key part of the Rashbam. This is what a Maimar is saying. L'gabi nixim alug to kivan de'enu miyuchid lo ish lo isha. Since it's not miyuchid for a man or a woman, enu kuri sada ish. It's not considered to be the man's field because it's really the woman's karka. V'lo sdeya isha. It's not only the woman's field because the husband has rights to the paris. Hilkach. Im machru shneim. Even if both of them sold it, machron batal. The yichon lachser bam ka'adam hamoicher davar shenu shaloi. It's not considered to be a sale. So therefore, a Meimor Taku would say is din even by Nichsim Alug. Okay, so how does that answer the question then? Because we originally asked the question, how a Meimor says that's even by Nichsim Alug. So the answer is, you're right. That's what a Meimor says, but doesn't mean we pass like him. Okay. Question number 3. V'lo ish chazaka b'nichsi ishto madua. Mashma de barai mechirasa mechira. V'yamer meimer isha shemachru b'nixim alug glosalo klum. So either a meimer is talking about where either the husband or the wife sold it, but not that both of them did, because if both of them did, then it would be a mechira. Or a meimer holds like Rabbi Lezer, as we just saw in the din of Yom Yomayim, that when you have basically partners of an Eved, so they don't have the din of Yom Yomayim, so to our Mishnah is the same thing. It says, so basically, our Mishnah doesn't hold like a Maimar, is basically what that means. Okay. All right. Weiter. Then the Mishnah said, so that a husband cannot have a chazak in the possessions that belong to his wife. Apparently, it's not true. If the husband is using this land, she does have to make a mecha. She does have to protest, obviously, because the husband is able to make a chazaka. So come on, Baman, 1 second. Who are we referring to over here? Who's the muchsak? If we're talking about some person who's not the husband, it can't be. We already said this, as the Rashbam, the Matzi Amra al Baili Samachti. She can say, I was relying on my husband to make the macha. Shil yimcha v'arer lokach sakti. That's the reason why I was quiet. Ubishar b'nei adam doloi baal kaimerav in machzikin. Fine. So if we're talking about someone else that has the land, so she could say, well, I didn't make a macha because I thought my husband was going to do it. Right? I allowed the business matters with my husband. So in that situation, certainly wouldn't work. El la b'baal. It must be telling you that when it comes to a husband, and in the case of a husband, she does need to make a macha because she can't say what her husband's the muksa. He's not going to make a macha on himself, right? So what do we see? There is a chazaka. So we have a kasha based on our Mishnah. So Marava l'oilam babal. You're right. Really, we're talking about the husband over here. So if it's the husband, how do we understand this? Does the husband have the ability to make a chazaka or not? So normally not. But ukagoyin shechavar b'adeshichan moedus. We're talking about a situation where he's destroying the field. Says the Rashbam, shehichsek b'nichse ishto kaimer Rav detzrich limcha shish chazak lobal. There is a time kigun shechavar habal b'adeshichan moedus. The leperes who dishtabid leiv nichse melug de ishto. He's allowed to eat the fruits of the field. That's where his rights begin and end. He's not allowed to just destroy the field. You could go in and it's referring to not that it's a field that these pits would be beneficial. It's in a sulaboidus. Therefore, in this case, he would have a chazaka because he must have certainly bought it from his wife, and therefore, as he's being recalcul the field, I'm not sure why he's doing that, but it doesn't matter. The wife should protest. So therefore, in that case, it would be a chazaka. But I thought we said that if you destroy things, you can't create a chazaka. So ema ein din chazaka nizakin. It just means there's no din, says Rashbam. If you're damaging something, then it's not a 3-year deal. 3 years is when you're kamaksa inchi, if you're acting like a normal owner. Ella, says the Rashbam, alter avi chazaka. Actually, when you're destroying someone's property, then it's a chazaka immediately. The ein adam roya mazikin karkashul v'shoysek el moicha miyad. So it's actually pumfa kert. It's not that there's no chazaka, but if you destroy property, and the fact that why are you doing this, I would never tolerate it if I was still the owner. And therefore, when it says ein chazaka nizakin, it means it's not the normal 3-year din, but it's alter havi chazaka. Iboy same alternatively, lav itmarwa Rav Mari oimer bekutra Rav Zvid oimer beisa kisei. As we've said this before, let's just go straight into the Rashbam. Really, when it comes to Bar Shich and Moedus, you do need 3 years. Even though it's not a Sulu Boyers. We're not talking about a chazaka for using the land for 3 years. You're damaging someone's property. You're going ashan v'reich ra. You're causing either a foul odor or a smoke. So the person should come and say, you're damaging my property. Even if it's a hezek for many days, that is not considered to be a hezek. If that is coming from, you're just damaging someone else's property because you're causing smoke, and the smoke is going into someone else's property, and therefore it's hard for them to breathe. So you're not creating a chazaka for that. Rav Yossi Oimer, okay. Rav Yossi Oimer Oilam Ba'acher. So going back to our original question, what's the din? We say in machzikim nichse ish ish, and so who is that referring to? So one answer is talking about the husband; he's destroying the property. Then she does have to make a macha. Alternatively, We're talking about someone else. So the question is, if it's someone else, so then shouldn't the wife simply say, I was relying on my husband to make a mecha? So this guy was there for a short amount of time while the husband was alive, but then her husband died. And then her husband died, and he was still there for 3 years, and she is still potentially the owner, but there's no husband anymore. So this guy who's the muksa could have just said to her, I bought it from you, because now that the husband was dead, he was there for 3 years afterwards, so he had shnei chazaka with her. So so also in this situation, he'll be believed as well, and therefore, because of this, she would need to have made a chazaka. Says the Rashbam, he had a little bit of a chazaka in the lifetime of the husband. He sold it to her. He sold it to him. V'gimel shanim shleimus lachar misas abal. In 3 years, 3 complete years. So ki agav the kaimer rav sri chalim chois can refarish time lo kamei. Okay, I and the rest of the Rashbam. All right. We're actually going to stop there, but let's see a couple questions. Ma Pirush. What does that mean? There's no chazak for nezakin. Either it means that you don't have to wait 3 years if you're destroying, like digging holes, but rather it's a chazak immediately. She should have made a mecha immediately, even though it was her husband. Or let's just read how he writes this. You're causing damage to your friend. I feel based on his house, like smoke or a bathroom. There's a bad smell. I feel hichsik yamim rabim. That doesn't do anything. That's question 4, which is the same thing as TA4. We'll just make sure it's the same thing. O de ein din cheskas kimo shanim el alter havi chazaka. O de ein chazaka nezakin de kutra obesa kise. It doesn't elaborate. Question 5. Be'elu ofanim hamidu begamar divrei rav de eshes ish sricha limchais. It's kind of similar to what we said before. So hichse kabor v'chafer ba'bar shichan amitis. So he's destroying the property. Or hichsek acher, someone else v'achal mixas chazaka b'chayabal. He was alive for part of it, and then the husband died, and then 3 years afterwards, so this man has a migu. He could have just said, I bought it directly from you, and therefore he's believed here as well. Okay, let's look at what I wrote for question TB5. Bebal im hu choifer boides shichan boides he sricha limchis, or bacherim im lochach asasada kasher habal chai v'achar kain. I didn't write like 1 year. V'achar kain habal meis who gar bebayis begimel shanim he sricha limchis. Adkan.